I'm not going to waste your time with more preamble. We did an introduction in the first part. We start off episode 2 with Lee and Mark in the woods hunting. Who's Mark? I don't know. He's here now. We do get some insight into his character during the conversation. He's apparently been with the group for a while now after giving them commissary food from the Air Force base. Overall, I like him. I'm sure he'll be around a while and we'll get to learn more about his character. We chat more about the group, and Mark acts as more of an expositional voice here, as well as asking you what you think about Larry. Whatever you decide ends up coming back to you, so yeah, think about it carefully. But Mark does mention he wouldn't want to be stuck in a small room with him, which is
foreshadowing.
You have the option to tell them to take the shot on a bird that lands in a tree. Neither option particularly does anything, but it does add to the choices Lee's character will make, especially since the group is currently starving. We hear screaming in the distance and we're worried it's Kenny, and we're not pulling any punches this time. We're introduced to 2 students and their teacher who's gotten his leg clamped in a bear trap. And Kenny meets up with us too, saying what we're all probably thinking right now.
Why the fuck is there a bear trap out here?
Another thing that Mark mentions is there's no release latch on the trap, which is actually an important detail for later. This setup as of right now is too frantic on first playthrough for most people to make sense of the small details. It's a nod to how well set up every section of the game is. You would only remove a release latch if what you're catching could release the latch. Another really important bit of information is that Ben's friend Travis has a dad that was in Special Forces.
Ben, shut up! My dad was Special Forces, I know what I'm doing!
That'll sure come in handy if they join our group. There's only one option to save the teacher in this situation: cut his leg off. I usually go with the saving option, but it's not exactly easy for Ben and Travis to see someone's leg being cut off. The Travis, my dad was Special Forces guy, uses his dad's knowledge from being in Special Forces to be eaten by walkers. If you choose to leave the teacher behind, he tries to grab Mark's gun, another classic Special Forces move, and gets shot in the stomach. For now, in this frenetic shamble, we're at least able to bring back Ben and maybe the teacher or Travis. Leaving the teacher is one of the most horrible moments for me. It's a heartbreaking moment, and I'd be lying if I didn't view this as the worst outcome. I would have even been okay with the additional option to shoot him, because that comes across as more merciful for me than leaving him out there to suffer and die at the hands of walkers. Either way, you're winding up with one wounded person and Ben as new additions to the group, which sparks an argument about bringing more people into the group being a terrible idea given they're low on food and resources, and more mouths to feed is a huge problem. Lily and Larry take the utilitarian, militaristic approach of survival at any costs when dealing with new members to the group. As a player, you may find yourself agreeing or disagreeing with their perspectives, but for me personally, I think we can have a further discussion about it when the wounded is healed up and we can see if we're able to send them on their way, or if they have valuable skills the group can depend on that outweighed potential food losses on first playthrough. This commercialization of people's usefulness is critiqued heavily in apocalyptic scenarios, and I feel the need to interject that if Lily ran a community the way she tries to run the group, it would potentially be seen as a bad way to run a community. However, she's looking out for the survival of the people that she knows in her immediate vicinity, and sometimes, especially in desperate times, that means that you cannot help other people. One of those put your mask on before the masks of others situation. Staying neutral in this conflict pisses off Kenny a lot more than Lily. Kenny and Lily both have egotistical traits that lead them to butt heads, and Kenny prefers devout loyalty from you, as I believe it's suggested the group looks to you for your opinions a lot, more than they care to admit. Even if they disagree with you, what you say carries weight, thus the story can be swayed heavily by whose side you choose, at which point. Lily insists that you bear the burden of handing out the food rations today. She does so aggressively and abrasively if you agreed or sided with Kenny, or if you were neutral. If you sided with her, she more expresses that she is simply exhausted from having to manage everybody's food and the emotions that come with not giving everyone a good meal. There's some interesting interactions that can happen here depending on who you give the food. For example, even if you didn't feed Kenny, if you fed Duck and Clementine, Kenny will still respect your choice. Not feeding any of Kenny's family will lead to a confrontation. Carly will graciously accept the food while also expressing concern for your well-being. Doug will actively reject the food and say to give it to someone else. Larry is caught off guard if you give him food. Mark is grateful and will eat the food. Lily will reject the food if you disagreed with her earlier, but be very grateful for the food if you agreed with her earlier. Both Clementine and Duck will eat the food with abject glee. When you feed Clementine, she will ask you to feed Duck. Not giving Clementine food would have me wondering if you actually have a soul. You're given the option to save the last piece of food for yourself. Choosing to feed yourself is something I would have struggled with on first playthrough because my own insecurities would bleed into this decision. I think a lot of people would relate to wanting to put others before themselves even in a survival situation. Is the Lee we're playing allowed to have food? Are we allowed to have food for how we're playing? Choosing to give yourself food has no lasting ramifications other than you not having an additional piece of food to give to the other group members. While this is happening, you can choose to help Katja patching up our injured special forces man or the teacher, to which Katja says this line.
It's what your husband wanted.
Figures. I love that man to death, but I swear sometimes he's dumber than a bag of hammers.
This circles back to an earlier line said by Kenny, and I can't help but take this to mean that Katja views Duck to be similar to Kenny in many ways that only strengthens how she feels about both of them. Or maybe it's just a common saying in their family, who knows? I also want to bring up that Clementine will mention that her hat is missing. You have the option to insist that you don't have time to find a hat, which just comes across as cold and uncaring. You could at least say that you will try to look for it, you know? On first playthrough, I was so endeared to Clementine that I saw finding the hat as a priority. One of the first and foremost things I want to do is take care of Clementine's well-being. After handing out rations, we end up getting praised and yelled at by various members of our group. We are summoned to talk to Katja, who could not save whoever we carried back. We get a moving moment from Kenny throwing down his tools and seemingly angry that he lost someone.
I'm getting sick of this shit.
Katja is attacked by our newly risen Special Forces officer or the teacher, which leads to a small action scene. On my old hardware, I encountered a glitch here where the camera pans out and you instantly die. I don't have that footage, and I can't find it anywhere else, so I assume it was just a once-off. Larry may be strong, but he's also old and inaccurate. If you chose to bring Carly along, Carly shoots the walker. Otherwise, you move the walker's head into position so that Larry can take a good swing at it. This leads to one of the more chilling moments you may remember me alluding to earlier. Outraged by the attack, the group yells at Ben, only for Ben to say this.
Kill my wife! What? Wait, you all don't know? What the hell are you talking about? It's not the bite that does it. You come back no matter how you die. If you don't destroy the brain, that's just what happens. It's gonna happen to all of us.
You're lying.
It's true. I swear it.
This grants the group a new perspective. Everyone is infected, which means any death in the group needs to be taken as seriously as possible. This is also the case in the show and comics, but them learning it here makes the most sense and also creates the central conflict of the second half of this chapter. If you saved Doug over Carly, the bell warning system that he's been setting up will activate here, giving you a chance to discuss while hiding on the best course of action. Unfortunately, Kenny uses our advantage to draw a gun on them first and keep them at arm's length. If you brought Carly, this scene does not occur and the St. Johns actually end up spooking you. Two of the St. Johns, Andy and Danny, introduce themselves at the wall asking for gas. You can choose to be on your guard here or be friendly. I personally was on guard on first playthrough. It really feels like they're meant to appear friendly, if not helpful, but I just got extremely creepy vibes from them. Like, they're too nice and too helpful. They're hiding something. Danny looks straight up like he's into some shady shit just the way he carries himself. Now we get one of the more frustrating choices in the game where we can choose to say that we do not want to go with them because their offer is too suspicious. The timing and circumstances is also quite odd. If you do this, it's put to a vote and you're sent to go with them anyway. And obviously if you agree to go and check things out, then you go along. This choice seems a little artificial. I get that there's only so much you can do in certain situations in games. Witcher and Mass Effect came out before this, and I felt the choices in those always seemed to have a slight bit of weight to them. Doug, Mark, and Lee walk to the dairy with the St. John's, either reluctantly or not, and we get introduced to another concept that will be all throughout episode 2, the Bandits. They're apparently quite plentiful, but we've never had any interactions with them. I wonder if we're being left alone for some reason. We're shown that the bandits are quite brutal and not above executing those they disagree with, which is the intentional juxtaposition here. We're meant to associate the bandits with the bad lay of the land and the St. John's with the benevolent group in the area. I've watched too many B-horror movies to be anything but suspicious about their arrival and behavior. But for now it seems that Lee shares our caution, but the group is hungry. Carly will also mention that maybe you should be leading things and that the group depends on you a lot, even if they don't care to admit it. You have the choice to pick who's leading the group, and you have the option to say it's you, Kenny, or Lily, or everyone's pulling their weight. Your options all have slight consequences for passing dialogue with other characters later, but to my knowledge it's not particularly pivotal in how the group views you. The dairy is presented as a small bit of paradise, untouched by the war-torn, starving misery of the surrounding area. A fence keeps the monsters away. You can sleep peacefully at night here. You're encouraged to revel in the relief of having this small oasis in the chaos of the world. Brenda even seems to wait for you to arrive with freshly baked goods for the group to have as a peace offering. Interesting she had those packed for us. You send Carly or Doug back with Ben to go and collect the rest of the group. You and Mark discuss the game plan. Mark is excessively excited about the situation, stating that the food and the safety may be worth whatever our suspicions are towards the St. John's. They've been nothing but kind after all, and apart from me being on edge on the first playthrough, I kind of wondered if I hadn't just been conditioned by other horror media into being cautious of people who are too nice in horror stories, like a smile with too many teeth, one could say. We also bring up that our group has a vet and their cow is sick. So far there's an equal trade of supplies here. There's a small point and click section over here that allows you to build a swing for the kids. We can learn more about the St. John's here, and for the most part the information is superficial. Brenda will talk to us about her husband and how his legacy still surrounds the dairy, with her even getting slightly uncomfortable when Lee probes her about the other rooms in the house, even though he disarms that with saying it looks custom built. She'll deflect on what is an otherwise pretty normal observation. Andy is more direct, wanting to know about your group and specifically how well armed you are. Unlike the house observation, I viewed this question as potentially threatening. Telling him we mean business leads to him stepping back from the question, so that's good at least. Though once again, why was that line of questioning here? Swing built and Brenda interrogated, we offer to check out the fence perimeter to clear it out of any walkers. Andy saying he'll switch off the fence while you work. Mark and Lee have a chat here and you can choose to be optimistic or skeptical. Mark will also mention whether you did or didn't give him food, but this response feels more like a slight praise or a slap on the wrist rather than a choice with lasting consequences. Mark and Lee's conclusion is despite their suspicion they need the food, they're all going to starve to death otherwise, and maybe hoping for some reprieve from what's happened to the world isn't so bad.
Holy fuck! What just happened?
The fences are on.
Why the hell would he turn the fence on? He knows we're out here.
Yeah, okay. Thankfully, they didn't have a shotgun or something. There's a tense series of events where you need to use the tractor as cover and need to get the tractor moving so that you can get to the main gate. You also have to deal with a walker while under fire, but more interesting is the dialogue that happens here. The bandits are outraged about the group, assuming that these are the members of the St. John's not living up to their side of the bargain. What that bargain is left vague, but there's definitely arrangements made between the St. John's, and they fail to mention that. We're able to get away, and when we arrive, Andy gives us a shocked expression and Lee is outraged, and Andy will mention that he thought that they were giving him the okay to switch the fences back on. Sure. Our group arrives, sans Doug or Carly and Ben, who stayed behind, to our brand new paradise to see Mark with an arrow deeply embedded in his shoulder. Brenda insists to take him upstairs to take care of him, probably the greatest mistake disguised as an act of kindness in the whole game, considering how Mark was still standing and he seemed okay and just needed to have it yoinked out. But no, he's whisked away upstairs out of the game. He's a cool character, I hope he pulls through. If you suggested that the group doesn't go with the St. John's, you'll get a comment here stating that maybe you were right and this wasn't a good idea. For now, the group settles into this area waiting for the fabled dinner that Brenda is cooking. We get to touch base with everyone after Andy awkwardly mentions whomever you chose as the leader of your group. This only occurs if you fix the swing. If you couldn't figure out how to fix the swing, Andy does it for you while you're away repairing the fence. The swing scene was one of the first points I cried. Pushing Clementine on the swing was a moving experience because this is what kids should be doing, not starving to death at a motel. But we also get insight into how she's doing. She's hungry. Very hungry and tired. She also worries about Mark, and one of her prominent character traits is showing compassionate concern for others while also being slightly withdrawn. You get to talk to her about if you think things will go back to where they were, all while Alive Inside plays softly. It's a really touching bonding moment for you and Clementine. Speaking to Kenny, he shares your suspicions about the St. John's, but that is also outweighed by the fact that his family needs to eat, and that's the most important thing to him, and whatever they're hiding is quelled for the time being. Earlier, when the St. John's are away, he'll also consider if they should take the place by force. Larry drops a banger line.
Well, that's easy. I got charm coming out of my ass.
Yeah, that's real charming, Dad.
Brilliant. Lily will berate you for bringing the group out here, regardless of the fact that the worst situation is starving to death at the motel. When the St. John's have a chance to provide us a meal, and maybe more if we're able to dissolve any feelings of mistrust we have of them, we try to talk to her about her dad's attitude towards us, and her insight is, nope, he's been through a lot, you just have to deal with it. Okay, no, there is a little bit more going on here. Larry has lost just about everything in life, and the only thing that's holding him in a tangible place in this world is taking care of his daughter. It's made him bitter and withdrawn. This is why he behaves the way that he does. I would have preferred not to be punched in the face by all of this, but I could see Lily's perspective. It is her dad, after all. We team up with Danny to go scope out the bandit camp, and we get another moment of Lee flexing his protagonist energy.
Who the fuck are these people in the woods?
Clementine will express concern for your venture into the camp, which leads to this rather touching line.
I'll be back soon, Clementine.
Please be lucky.
I will.
The approach to the camp is tense on first playthrough, but for the most part seems abandoned. But we come across two pieces of crucial information. There's boxes from the dairy at the camp, which Danny will dismiss as the food they're giving them, but also find a camera with a dead battery, which Danny is way too concerned over. These two events were enough to me to put together that this abandoned camp was just for show. Danny didn't expect to find anyone here, and was mostly using this as a means of convincing Lee that they were on the same side. We check the tent inside, and we can see that there's a picture of a family, a kid's stuffed toy, and Clementine's hat. This really took a turn for me because now we have proof that our group has been infiltrated potentially by bandits and other parties, but that's quickly dispersed when we're threatened by a woman who's seen better days. Her name is Jolene. She's pretty clear that she's not with the bandits. She was, but then killed them after they took her daughter. This is in an abandoned bandit camp that she's occupying. You have the choice here to shoot her, and if you choose to press her on what she knows, Danny will shoot her when she gets too close to revealing what the St. John's do.
Screw this.
Y'all wave them guns like...
Splendid! You killed them all!
If you shoot her, Danny will appraise the shot and also act surprised that you pulled the trigger. This comes off as a strange reaction since we were here specifically to send a message to the bandits. Either of these options may lead us into further suspicions of the St. John's activities in the surrounding area. We head back and we're either told that we handle it or Danny handle it. The weather is growing stormier, which represents the rising suspicions and tensions of the group in an almost surreal way. Brenda laments that this would not be what her husband Terry wanted, and she sympathizes with Lee's position of seeing so much violence for his time, but there's not much else to mention here other than that it seems Brenda at least views violence as a last resort in some way. Kenny and Lily are fighting again. Speaking to Lily, Kenny has become extremely suspicious of the St. John's, and it's made him start constructing theories about what the St. John's are hiding. Lily will mention that she's also uneasy. They should get their meal and leave. Danny is not exactly fighting the accusations of being a massive creep as he strokes his named gun. Which gets even more creepy when he starts to fantasize about the fact that he used the gun today. If you didn't shoot Jolene and let Danny do it. We go into the barn and are greeted with a cow who's sick and is in labor. Depending on whether you said the barn in episode 1 smelt like shit or some other word, Clementine will repeat your line here. The swear is funnier, but it does get you a disapproving look from Katya. You're able to give Clementine her hat back here, and she jumps excitedly if you said that you would find it, and if you said you didn't have the time, she more says that she's happy to have it, but doesn't give you the same energy. Clementine also licked the salt lick. It's just kind of gross.
How do you like that cow, Clem?
She's pretty.
Clementine will ask if you would consider being a parent, and for me, I always felt strongly that I, as Lee, would want to have a family. It was a sense of optimism that I wanted to keep in the world, but every answer would probably speak more to how the player feels about having kids currently. You are told that you would be a good father by Clementine if you say that you would like kids, and if you say that you don't, Clementine will just acknowledge the statement and move on. We catch up with Kenny here, where we explore the back door to the barn. Kenny found it reasonably suspicious that they locked up the back door of the barn the moment they came in. You could talk to him about what happened at the camp, but more importantly, he brings up how he would do anything for his family, even sabotage their chance as a good meal if he has enough reason to believe they're in danger. You can get Lee to agree that he'd do anything for Clementine, or you can take the more reserved answer that she isn't actually his family, to which Kenny corrects you that you're all she has and you're damn well equivalent to families. You suggest a stealthier method. While standing clearly in view and talking loudly, you figure out that you can remove the screws and replace the lock. Kenny is then a little racist.
Hey, Lee, you know how to pick a lock, right?
No. Why would you say that?
Well, you're, you know, urban?
Oh, you are not saying what I think you're saying.
Jesus, man, I'm from Florida. Crazy shit just comes out of my mouth sometimes.
Considering I have something to say about literally everything, I also have something to say here. You see, you can paint Larry as a racist. As a player, if you're from any marginalized group, you can sympathize with the hostility Larry shows, specifically towards Lee. You could argue he finds you morally reprehensible for being a murderer, but he's too often described as militaristic and seems utilitarian in most senses. So in an apocalyptic setting, after spending enough time with someone, why would he still treat you like shit? Kenny's little remark here is at best a microaggression, but depending on how you play, Kenny can come across as vastly more racist than Larry. I think we're meant to put these two ideologies against each other as players, Kenny representing family and community with potential issues, or Larry and Lily representing utilitarian survivalship in extreme circumstances with hard lines and potential to oust anyone that's a danger to the group. I think this doesn't summarize it all though, because Lily and Larry represent another family dynamic, the more broken family dynamic, and found family is shown to be important to them. We opt to distract Andy, who will harass us if we try to fuck with the door. A classic point and click setup. Checking the stalls, we can find dirty clothes and used IV drips in one of them, which was enough for me to start putting things together on my first playthrough. Stepping outside, we can see Larry has cast aside his doubts to get close to Brenda. You can actually shoo Larry away here to talk more to Brenda, where you can insist on seeing Mark and she tells you to just trust her. You can also ask when dinner's gonna be ready, which is, yeah, kind of fair. You've got to be starving at this point. This little point and click section is fun. We're trying to turn off the generator as a distraction to keep Andy busy while we snoop around in the barn. I find it especially hilarious because you could try to grab the belt without turning it off first, which is very funny. This multi-tool is awesome. I love it. Andy does the classic point and click oblivious thing of not associating us with the fact that the belt vanished. And one of my main criticisms here is Danny can clearly see us fucking with the generator. Why doesn't he say anything? Maybe he was thinking about how hard he'd fuck his gun or something. Using our fabulous new multi-tool and with Kenny providing a distraction, we're able to get the door open to reveal Yeah, I think we can pretty easily see what's happening here. Andy even comes through here, and there's a bit of a sinister tone.
Dinner time.
It is indeed dinner time, and if you've been paying attention, because of course you have, look at you, I'm so proud of you. There's a dramatic irony here. Most players will have connected the dots to at least some capacity. The human bear traps, the woman's warnings, the tone. It's laid out pretty bare for us to assume that they're butchering people. The bandits didn't get any food because they've not had a group of survivors to butcher. At least that was my conclusion, but it seems Lee isn't ready to make that leap yet. And to be fair, I probably also would try to convince myself that I was being silly. This is enough for Lee to at least investigate the house when he's let in by pretending to go and wash his hands. For a group of people who are paranoid about being discovered at this point, I do find it weird that they let Lee be gone for quite a while, but also if they did get anxious about it, that might alarm the rest of the group, so that's fine. I still do find it weird though. Climbing the stairs, we're greeted by a cupboard with a lot of morphine in it, medical supplies, IV tubes and bandages, and a plug which seems to lead into a secret tunnel! Okay fine, it's just a room, but let me have my fun. Mark isn't in the bed, and if we push aside the bookshelf and open the bathroom door after connecting the plug which made the room light up, we find...
Mark, what the hell happened?
Brothers.
What the hell happened to your legs, man?
So this confirms it, but that doesn't make the scene any less horrifying, especially since they decided to keep him alive while they did it too. All the small mystery elements building up to this final moment where we find ourselves faced with one thing. Clementine might end up eating Mark. We rush down the stairs and any dialogue response here stops Clementine from eating it, except the one which is a movie reference.
It's... people!
What?
Yes, Lee. It's all people in here. Sit down. Your supper's...
Of course Clementine wouldn't get it. Even if you succeed in preventing Clementine eating the meat, the rest aren't so fortunate. The group is startled by Lee's mad ramblings in the situation, and I understand, even under extreme situations, and despite being slightly suspicious, accusing someone of butchering another person and feeding them to their guests is such an abhorrent concept, I'm not surprised there's some denial. It's not long after this altercation that the St. Johns confess, stating that Mark would have died anyway, which... no, he'd probably have been fine. This is classic manipulation. I'm no doctor, I'm just a Yankees fan. But he seemed fine. Just some bandages and such and he would have been fine. It becomes clear what they meant by this though. He would have died anyway because they were all going to die and they needed their meat for both themselves and to keep the bandits at bay. Andy makes the worst decision of his life by grabbing Clementine. Lee will remember that and so will I. We're knocked out and placed in a meat locker with Lily throwing up and Clementine commenting on whether she did or didn't eat a person. God, I feel so sorry for anyone that likes old movie references. Larry's reaction to bang on the door and yell doesn't help the situation, and not even Lily can calm him down. Conflict arises with Larry and Lee getting into a fight, and you could choose to be an asshole to him, but to be honest, he deserves a good roasting at this point, and not by Brenda. Eventually his behavior leads to his heart giving out.
Dad? No. Dad, come on. Dad! Oh God, he stopped breathing. I think he's had a heart attack.
Kenny quickly asks if he's dead. Considering the revelation earlier, if he's dead and comes back, our group will be in a bit of trouble. It's another great bit of writing that Mark mentioned this exact scenario earlier. A little bit on the nose, but I thought it was cool. Luckily, he got drugged up on opioids while he was butchered and thrown into a bathtub later, so he doesn't have to live with his worst nightmare. Kenny's immediate frantic reaction to this is that they have to find a way to destroy the brain quickly. Lily insists he's not dead and can be brought back. Now we're faced with one of the most important choices of the game. Regardless of how you play from this point on, it's going to be pretty hard to convince either Lily or Kenny to side with you on anything, depending on if you help Kenny put down Larry or if you try to revive him. If you try to revive them, there's a moment where you could interpret that he started breathing or had started to rise before Kenny drops a salt lick on his head.
Steve Le.
Larry as a character is hard to like, and while I can appreciate writing unlikable characters, his wounded warrior act gets old really quickly. No matter how much you've been through, placing your trauma on others in the form of being bitter and hateful is a toxic trait, and people around you justifying it are just encouraging a toxic cycle. I've had to interact with family members who've had similar toxic views on how they interact with people. It's always everyone else who's the asshole. They're allowed to spew the most heinous vitriol, but when I tell them to fuck off, suddenly I'm the problem. Larry is a bully. He's not all bark, as he has a mean right hook, but he's enough of an inept, grumpy old man that when criticized, he shows that he really can't take what he gives. His death here didn't upset me. I can understand Lily being upset, but Larry's treatment of us has made me rather unconcerned with whether he's alive or not. It's a human thing to want to help revive a woman's father, even if the father himself was an asshole. That being said, on my first playthrough, I helped Kenny kill him. My choice was more based around keeping Clementine safe here anyway. And even if we had a chance to save Larry, the risk kind of outweighs the benefits. If you try to help Lily resuscitate Larry, she'll be much more compassionate and understanding and listen to you when you offer your condolences. If you side with Kenny, definitely not so much. There's a scene earlier on in episode 1 where Kenny and Lee talk about Herschel's farm. If you chose to save Duck, you have the opportunity to console Kenny. If you tried to save Sean, you can also berate Kenny here. Either option has Kenny accepting that he was at fault, whereas here he very much believes that he was justified in his actions in order to protect everyone. He will be outraged that you didn't have his back, especially since you've known him for the longest, and his family. Either choice has you stuck in the meat logger with no clear way of escaping except through the ventilation. You need something to unscrew it, and thus have to rummage through Larry's corpse for coins. Lily being beside herself, it's a really hard conversation to have with someone as they cry over their father's body. We can find her mother's ring in his pocket, and we obviously don't take that, which makes me ponder if there was a cut of the game where we used that for something instead, because that would kind of work and also be equivalently horrifying. We're able to get the vent open, but the only one who can fit through is Clementine, which is terrifying. On my first playthrough, it had me on edge, because I don't know what I'd do if something bad happened to Clem. The game doesn't pull its punches either, so you're constantly worried for her. This is the first of many times Clementine pulls her weight. It's a moment of growth for her, but also walking through the people butchering room will probably haunt her nightmares for a good long while. The world is no place for a child anymore. If you sided with trying to resuscitate Lily's dad, Kenny storms out impulsively in a manner that could get everyone killed, while Lily takes an opportunity to mourn. If you sided with Kenny, he's much more calculated and listens to you, while Lily screams at you at the top of her lungs to leave her alone. How Lee reacts to situations affects how you see the characters. Through what lens do you see them? Kenny comes off as more of an asshole if you don't agree with him on many things, and Lily can also equivalently be an asshole. You can interact with everything in the people butchering room to get certain dialogues from Lee. We attempt to sneak up on Danny, only for Andy to start berating him for sitting out in the rain like an idiot, so we hide in one of the stalls. And this moment where we're checking up to see where Danny is meant to be tense, but it feels kind of silly. The preceding struggle doesn't, though. We grab the shotgun, only just barely avoiding a shot. Lee's ears ringing as he takes his selected flavor of weapon and strikes Danny, with either Lily or Kenny coming up with a follow-up attack, poetically knocking him into the bear trap. I forgot to mention, Danny was setting up bear traps to give some of them false hope, only to have them walk into the trap. So I'm really glad he ended up in his own contraption, to be honest. Kenny storms out.
I won't be far behind.
There's many things weighted by this decision, and ones later down the line. Many strands are at odds in my head with this choice. He's rambling about you and me are not so different, or some other tripe. Like, no, you torture and eat people, dude. Killing him could be justified here. What if he gets free and comes after you and Clementine? He's a horrible, sadistic, dangerous murderer. But on the other hand, you may not want to be the arbiter of justice. You may want to hope for a better world. Danny is also fucked either way. You do not know or think any of the St. Johns are going to be left unharmed, so maybe it's more fitting to let him rot here in the bear trap of his own making. You won't be like Danny, no matter what your choice here, so I can see both choices being valid here. This choice will blindside you with the fact Clementine sees what you decide here, which may remove the red from your eyes for a moment, and I'm going to put a pin in that for the moment. Ben, Doug, or Carly show up outside the fence. Doug tries to grab your attention with a laser pointer that was mentioned earlier, nearly blinding you, whereas Carly sneaks up in the bushes. You give them a debrief on the situation, which must be one of the wildest stories anybody has probably heard summarized. Imagine if I just summarized The Walking Dead instead. I'd probably be happier. Nah, I'm kidding. I like doing this stuff. Lee sneaks up on the house while the sound of fighting happens, and Lee does his best Danny impression?
Andy? Danny, is that you? What's going on out there?
Yeah, it's me.
Not winning any Oscars here, are we? Once you get to the door, Brenda has Katja at gunpoint and a talk down begins. The objective here is to appeal to Brenda's good nature in that she still perceives herself to be a good person. I personally find something disgusting about her pleas of pity here when she's been involved in butchering, cooking, and killing people. Either way, you appeal to her good nature. You force her to back up enough where Mark chomps her, and that takes care of Brenda, which means that Katja is safe. A fitting end for Brenda to be chomped by someone she's butchered. This game does have a strong sense of poetic justice. When we go back outside, Andy has Duck hostage, and Kenny tries to charge him while Andy has a rifle. Good one, Kenny. We try to talk Andy down in a similar way. Or not. It doesn't matter. We can tell him to shut the fuck up too. Either Carly takes a shot or Doug blinds him with a laser pointer. The struggle here is short before Andy drags you over to the electric fence to try turn you into Lee Bacon from Macon. If you tried to save Lily's dad, she takes a shot at Andy, which helps Lee overcome him. But if she doesn't, then Lee still manages to get a good elbow on Andy and get on top of him. And now for one of my favorite scenes in the game. These people tried to kill you under the guise of kindness. They've hurt your friends, gotten some of you killed, and they tried to hurt Clementine. The pouring rain as you pound Andy's face into the dust. You can keep doing this until he's unrecognizable. The music swell as Lee takes out all his rage over the past few months at this monster in man's skin, added one more pile of trauma for them to deal with. Eventually you get up, he threatens you, and I'll just play the scene for you.
Come on, let's go. Is that all you got, Lee? You ain't shit! It's over! Fuck you! As soon as Dad and Mama get out here, you're all fucked! They're both dead. What did you do? What the fuck did you do? Don't you dare walk away from me, Lee! Get back here and finish this, Lee!
He demands you finish him. On my first playthrough, I didn't kill him or Danny actually. My reasoning for this had nothing to do with being morally against killing such horrible people in this story. It had to do with what it represented for my group and, more importantly, what it would do to Clementine. For Danny, I had no idea that Clementine would see me do that, but I had this inkling in my mind that I had to try and be good for her in this game, even if that meant taking the risk of leaving these people alive, or I suppose worse, as walker food. When I was given the choice to kill Andy, it wasn't just Clem watching, it was the whole group, all of those I've come to know as family, despite all the horrible stuff that's transpired. I wanted to take a stand and represent something I could go forward believing in. I thought I wouldn't be able to do that in this game if I killed Andy. It wouldn't feel like I had made the right call, and that's such a personal thing. This was my Lee wanting so badly to make them hurt, to make them pay for all the suffering they've caused. But looking at his exhausted, dirt-covered, shot-up group and going, leave, just leave. They're nothing and our group is everything. I also understand killing them. I really do. But when I cried here on my first playthrough, I knew I had something special, something anyone can relate to in a number of ways. All choices here had a certain level of justification. We're all making these choices and processing why we think the way we do. It's a moment of introspection which only gaming can provide. It's not just, I did that, it's, why did I do that? I think this is the turning point for me and why I felt as passionately as I do about this game for all these years. The group walks back somber and exhausted. If you have Carly, she'll console you about Clementine. If you have Doug, he will do the same. Clementine will ask you about the St. John's, and there's a few options here to explain to Clementine. If you killed the St. John's, you will then explain that it was necessary to protect you and the group. If you don't, you can explain to Clementine that they're worse off than dead, or you can go with the approach of telling her that killing is bad no matter what. Kenny will discuss the aftermath of Larry's death with you and where you sided on the matter. If you sided with him, Lee can take the position that they fucked up, it was the wrong call in the heat of the moment, or you can agree that it was the right thing to do. If you didn't side with him, you can also have this touching moment.
You murdered Larry.
Fuck you, man. You're alive because of me. Why didn't you have my back?
I saved your wife and kid.
No, I saved them by making sure Larry didn't kill us.
I couldn't do it, Ken.
Well, maybe we should stay out of each other's way for a while.
There are times when Lee can't act on things, when it's too hard, when somebody else needs to make the call, when he's not thinking clearly. He's human after all. We hear something in the distance, a car with lights still on, with a massive amount of food and supplies inside. We didn't notice this car any of the times venturing to and from this area, so it's easy to assume that this car is owned by someone and that they will be back. But your group is in a dire predicament, and this food, medicine, and supplies could save everyone's lives. Lily does make a point.
If they come back, then we're just monsters who came out of the woods and ruined their lives.
This stuff isn't ours.
Kenny counters with the fact that they'll suffer and die without the supplies, and so you're offered the choice to join the group in taking the stuff from the car or to stand with Clementine while the others do it. The choice to take Clementine's side here was one I took on my first playthrough. Personally, I wanted to see where the game took me in regards to not taking it, as well as wanting to be a good role model to Clem. Retaining some level of humanity may help her grow somewhat, adjusted, and that was important to me. Lee and Clem's father-daughter relationship meant a lot to me, and I don't know, maybe I'm a sucker for these kinds of stories. Logan is one of my favorite superhero movies and has a similar dadification plot. If you choose to take the supplies, Clementine will adorn the hoodie that Lee offers her.
It's not mine.
It's yours now.
Otherwise, Katya will recommend the hoodie because it's going to get cold, and Clementine and Lee will decline. Either Doug or Carly will give Clementine some batteries for her walkie-talkie. Either Carly gives you the batteries for the camera, or Doug fixes the camera, and we're shown a recording of Jolene, the woman that either Lee or Danny killed. She was stalking the motel in an almost protective fashion, watching over Clementine as if it were her own daughter who was taken from her. Jolene's kid wasn't just taken, Jolene was also sexually assaulted by these bandits in the woods. Jolene's line leads us into a teaser for the next episode. The St. Johns kept the bandits busy by making them food and keeping them happy. They weren't bothering our group. With them gone, the group is more than likely going to be harassed or raided for supplies. You could also say that Lee has to live with the fact that he killed a woman in cold blood because Danny told you that she was the enemy. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the support I've been experiencing just going through this series and my channel in general. I really, really appreciate it. And looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye! Anyway, you should probably head off now. It's been like 45 minutes. Yeah, go eat some meat or something. Not human meat though. That's bad. We've just covered why that's bad.